Good evening, and welcome to Bedtime Stories, a presentation of the Florida Gulf Coast chapter of Sisters in Crime. I'm Teresa Michael, president of the chapter and your host. Each weeknight during the Southwest Florida Reading Festival, you will hear a bedtime story from one of our Sisters in Crime authors. Before we get started, I'd first like to offer a big thank you to our festival hosts for providing Sisters in Crime with the opportunity to participate in the festival. The hardworking staff of the Lee County Library System has done an exceptional job organizing the festival. As a reader, author, and Sister in Crime member, I thank you. I also want to tell you a little bit about Sisters in Crime. Our organization is filled with people just like you and me who love mystery, murder, and mayhem. Sisters in Crime was founded in 1986 by 26 women mystery authors, among them Sarah Paretsky, Nancy Picard, and Charlotte McLeod. Its mission to support women mystery writers in the largely man's world of publishing. Back then, even the greatest of women writers struggled for equity in publishing contracts, marketing resources, book award nominations, and access to bookstores, libraries, and reviews. Now, 35 years later, crime writing is no longer a man's world. Women crime writers are thriving, and Sisters in Crime supports more than 4,200 members and 60 chapters worldwide. We are an inclusive, diverse group, bound together by the love of a good crime fiction read. I encourage you to join this truly unique community which shares your passion for mystery, thrillers, and suspense. Learn more about Sisters in Crime and the local chapter in your area on our national website at sistersincrime.org. And now, this is Bedtime Stories. Lisa Malice is a psychologist turned mystery writer. Keep your fingers crossed. Lisa's debut novel, a psychological thriller, is out on submission through her agent. Tonight, she returns to Bedtime Stories with the long, happy death of Ian MacTavish. An aging billionaire oilman reflects on his unhappy life after the death of his beloved wife. And he laments on his greatest failure, raising a family that loves his money more than him. Determined to change the hearts of his greedy kin and find some measure of peace in doing so, he sets in motion a plan to take effect after his death. When he dies suddenly of a heart attack, his trusted friend and lawyer goes to work, determined to protect the man's dying wish from the family he disinherited, for their own good, of course.
Howdy. Thank you for joining me tonight for the debut of my short story, The Long, Happy Death of Ian MacTavish. It's not a typical mystery nor a thriller, more of a suspense, I'd say, wrapped up in a family drama. It's told from the perspective of Charles Chesterfield, the longtime friend and lawyer of the deceased oilman. So let's get started. Boy, howdy, but can they move, Reverend O'Hare said with a note of disgust in his voice. They fled faster than a herd of gluttons at an all-you-can-eat buffet after they swallowed the last scrap of food. The padre was right. The moment the minister uttered the final amen over the grave of Ian MacTavish, his family turned and bolted from the graveside without a word. The only emotion they showed, sneers, frowns, glares, were aimed at me, the lawyer for their recently departed patriarch. Sad truth was, the small family cemetery, with its 2 lone residents, held no emotional attachments for Ian's survivors. A lot of them, sons, daughters, spouses, grandchildren, had fidgeted tight-lipped throughout the service without shedding a single grief-racked tear, joining in the prayers for Ian's soul, or offering even a few words of remembrance, fond or otherwise. I knew why each of them had come, why they glared at me during the service. Ian's will. He left behind land and money, vast sums of it, more than 500,000 acres of untapped oil-rich grazing land in Texas alone, more than $1 billion in other assets and cash holdings. But I wasn't surprised by the crass behavior of Ian's offspring. As the dead oilman's personal and corporate lawyer for the last 50 years, his best friend Charlie for nearly 60, I shared the pain Ian suffered at the hands of his own flesh and blood. They treated him no better than an ATM machine, something visited only when money was in short supply or a problem needed a payoff to go away. Not one of them ever thanked Ian for his unwavering support and generosity, nor offered a word of regret for their legal and moral lapses. My friend deserved better than to be ignored and taken advantage of. He deserved a loving family. After bidding the minister goodbye, I turned my gaze upon the gleaming bronze urn nestled in the shallow grave at my feet and smiled at the bittersweet truth of its inscription. In death, he is reborn to a wondrous new life. Ian's unworthy family would cause him no more grief, give him no more heartache. I was happy for my friend, but crestfallen that it had taken death to give him relief. My own heart ached as I reached down and brushed the urn's dirt-smudged twin, which held the ashes of Ian's deceased wife, Ellie. Heaven welcomes a new angel, her inscription said. No one could ever doubt those words. Surely she'd been a living angel here on earth, especially for Ian. Her happiness was everything to him, so he bore the burden of his children alone, saving her from the truth of their miserable, rotten lives. Ellie's death from cancer 2 years ago had been a blow to Ian, one my friend struggled with every day since her passing, living with the one failure in his life he most regretted, not being able to save the woman he'd loved for more than 60 years. I lingered at Ian's grave for one last prayer, guidance for the difficult work that lay ahead. Fulfilling the terms of Ian's will was only the beginning. The hard work would come after I brought the family together to view a last message from their patriarch, after which all hell was sure to break loose among the surviving members of the MacTavish clan until they joined together and came after me. On a frigid February afternoon, 6 weeks after Ian MacTavish passed away, I stood in my downtown Dallas office observing his 25 survivors as they gathered to view the videotape portion of their deceased patriarch's last will and testament. As they jockeyed for seats in front of a 52-inch flat-screen TV, I strolled around the room and eavesdropped on their hushed conversations. But their whispers couldn't hide the greed in their words and their hearts. Start the damn video and get on with it. I gotta be somewhere soon. I held my tongue and turned a cold glare from Nicole, the 22-year-old daughter of Ian's youngest son, Jeb. Short and slender with jade eyes and unseasonably bronzed skin, she wore her long auburn hair down around her oval face. Squirming in an end seat in the last row, she crossed her legs not once but twice, flaunting the blood-red mini dress that hugged her frame so tightly her silicone-stuffed breast nearly fell out of its plunging neckline. Open-toed, 4-inch gold heels and garishly large diamonds hanging from her ears and neck completed her outfit. Not the sort of attire polite society would expect at such a somber event, but then again, these people were far from polite society. Sitting on Nicole's left was her half-brother Michael, tall with long jet black hair and a square jaw. The only physical trait he shared with his older sister were his jade eyes, a color that shared by many in the MacTavish bloodline. But where Nicole's clothes spoke of money and class, Michael's black leather jacket, white t-shirt, and worn jeans bellowed biker, a look in keeping with an addiction to motorcycles and the low-life women attracted to them. Chill, sis, Michael said, jabbing his sister with an elbow. Your party can't start without the old man's dough in your wallet. His comments drew guarded smiles and snorts from the crowd, confirming that the reading of Ian's will clearly was cause for celebration for the entire clan. Over the next few minutes, Ian's kin fidgeted and sniffled and dabbed at their eyes with their expensive silk handkerchiefs. To the unsuspecting, these people might appear truly devastated by the death of a loved one, but I knew better. Those pricey tissues messed the dry eyes and eager grins of my old friend's money-starved family. When the grandfather clock standing against the back wall finally struck 4, I stepped to the front of the room and addressed the gathering. Welcome, and thank you all for being here. It's about time. It's been nearly 2 months since Daddy died. The high nasal voice, leveling the criticism, came from Ian's youngest daughter, 32-year-old Angela. Like her niece, Nicole, Angela appeared to have chosen an outfit for another, less solemn event, although she had the sense to dress for the cold winter weather outside. The leggy brunette wore a purple designer pantsuit over a silky white blouse. Heavy gold and diamond jewelry adorned her neck and ears. A long mink coat lay in her lap. Of all of Ian's children, she was perhaps his biggest disappointment. As an unexpected late addition to the family, Angela had been declared a gift from God by Ellie when she was born, while Ian had proclaimed the tiny, beautiful girl an angel, hence her name. Nearly 3 decades later, the sainted baby girl, all grown up, took more after the devil than a heavenly being. "What kind of inept lawyer are you anyways, Chesterfield?" Angela continued her tirade. "It shouldn't have taken this long to call this meeting. We have rights as heirs, you know, obligations too. I haven't seen a check since just after Christmas. No one has. We need our money and we need it like yesterday." I ignored Angela's verbal assault, and the chatter it prompted, grabbed the TV remote and pressed play. Ian appeared on screen, larger than life. His big, burly image paced my office, strong and steady, the picture of health, no hint of heart trouble. I turned and surveyed the crowd as they watched the video. The expression on their faces were much the same, like one might expect from a person dying of thirst in a desert after they spotted a lush oasis on the horizon. But I took pleasure knowing that the mirage would soon disappear. "Well, here y'all watching me, so I must be dead, and my body already returned to the dirt," which is right, because that's how I started out my life. I was dirt poor, nothing to show for myself but a dream of a better life for me, my family and kids, and a drive to succeed. I built a multi-billion-dollar empire with hard work and sweat, scrimping, saving, investing every dime I earned. Unfortunately, I raised a family that don't have the same work ethics, values, or brains, just a hankering for spending other people's hard-earned money. I scanned the room. Already I could see a change in the faces of Ian's kin. The smiles were gone, replaced by furrowed brows and frowns. "I've been real disappointed on how y'all turned out. None of you know what it means to put in a hard day's work. You use credit to buy everything, never given any thought to saving up to buy something. When it comes to people, y'all think you can buy them too. I'm willing to bet that not one of your friends would stick by you if you lost everything or hand a blood nickel to your names. But they're your friends because just like them, y'all judge people on what they own, not who they are. What I'm trying to say is that none of you know the truth about money." As I glanced around the room, I grinned with satisfaction, enjoying the growing alarm on the faces of those who had caused my dearest friend so much heartache over the years. In my mind, it was payback time, long overdue parental discipline on Ian's part, at the very least. I couldn't help feeling sad that it took his death to exact the consequences that his children and grandchildren so richly deserve for their reprehensible behavior. I turned back towards the screen. "The God's honest truth about money is that it's worthless," Ian shouted from the TV screen. "The only thing of true value, love, cannot be bought with $1, $1,000,000, or $1,000,000. Unfortunate for me, I learned this too late, in the twilight of my life, after looking around and seeing what really matters. And what I see, what I feel, and what I now know is that my family loves money, my money, more than they love me, and more than they love each other. What's worse, y'all love money more than you loved your poor ma and grandma. My poor Ellie, may she rest in peace. She didn't die of cancer. She died of a broken heart from feeling unloved, unappreciated by the lot of you. She had died years ago. She got wind of the god-awful things y'all did, knew how rotten y'all were in your hearts." The angry man on the TV screen stopped pacing. The anger in his eyes receded. His voice grew less frantic, with a tone that reflected the weariness of an old man finally facing the sad, undeniable truth about his life. "It was my fault, I guess, for giving you all everything you wanted without having to earn it, for bailing you out of every mess you ever got yourselves into. But your ever-loving mom, grandma, she wanted it that way, and I could never say no to her. So we gave you everything, while y'all gave back nothing, not even a speck of love, which is the only thing my dear Ellie ever wanted. We were happy when we were still a poor young family. That all changed as soon as money, lots of it, came into our lives. Ian dropped his gaze, shook his head, then looked into the camera with a strained smile. He set his hands over his heart, as if he were about to make a pained confession. For your own good, kids, I've disinherited every single one of you. Cut you all off without a dime. As of this moment, all the homes, cars, jewelry, and credit cards I've paid for, all the bank accounts I've filled with money for y'all, they're gone. As my trusted attorney and executor, Charlie spent the week since my death selling off all my property and holdings. I'm leaving all my money to worthy charities all over the world, and you're naming your poor dead ma and grandma. What's done and done, and none of y'all can change it. The only things y'all have left is the cash in your wallets, the clothes on your backs, and the expensive highfalutin diplomas I paid for some of you. Might be a good time to dust them off, see if any of you can get some use out of them. The anger in Ian's face faded, and a more sympathetic look took its place. This part of Ian's videotaped will had to be shot more than once, as my friend had been determined to show some compassion for his offspring, something that didn't come easy for him, given how little they had offered him and Ellie over the years. I know that it'll be hard for y'all to be poor, just as it was for me when I was young, but hopefully, while facing the financial struggles ahead as a family, y'all come to love each other like we did in those early days. If you can't or won't do this together and do it honestly, then I expect every last one of you will end up living on the streets or maybe doing time in a nice little prison. My mind conjured up an image of Ian's family dressed in rags, standing by the side of the road holding "No work for food" signs. I laughed, a guffaw that drew glares. I mumbled an insincere apology and directed the group's attention back to the TV screen. You young folk getting ready to graduate high school might think about joining the army, just like I did after my poor mama died and left me with no place to live in and no money in my pocket. Give it some serious thought. It'd give you all the discipline you're going to need to make a life for your own. And there's good benefits too. Free meals, clothing, housing, healthcare for life. And when you get out of service, you can get a college degree on Uncle Sam's dime, like Charlie did here. Best decision I ever made, Ian, joining the service. That's how I met you, my friend. My comment drew angry scowls from the teenagers across the room, while the eyes of the older ones remained riveted to the figure on the TV. Anyway, whatever y'all do, the choice is entirely yours. I pray to God each of y'all make the right decision. I've made what I know in my heart is mine. I hope y'all have a wonderful life, one full of love for each other, not money. The screen went blank. While the family sat in stunned silence, I led in 6 burly security men. They went to work confiscating jewelry, keys to houses and cars, all assets in Ian MacTavish's name until that morning, when they reverted to Ellie's foundation. The family had frittered away the bulk of Ian's largesse on luxurious vacations, expensive parties, designer clothes, entertainment, booze, and drugs, rather than any real assets of any lasting worth. All that remained in the pockets and purses of Dallas's newest homeless family were a variety of now useless credit cards. After being stripped clean of valuables, my men hustled the distraught family out the door and into the waiting elevator for the long ride down to the street, the place the lot would soon call home if they failed to heed the last sage words of advice from their deceased patriarch. Now alone in my office, I poured a generous shot of scotch into a heavy lead tulip glass. I gently swirled the amber liquid, watched as it coated the sides of the glass, and inhaled a whiff of its pleasing aroma. I took a sip, held the smooth liquid in my mouth, and savored the complex flavors that unfolded: malt, oak, hints of almond and citrus. A slow swallow later, a pleasant feeling of warmth spread throughout my body, and a contented sigh escaped my lips. I had been this happy in a long time. Alas, I knew the contentment wouldn't last. After the shock wore off, acrimony and accusations would fly throughout the family, each trying to blame the others for losing what they saw was their rightful inheritance. Some would undoubtedly go it alone, try to plead their case to me for at least a small piece of Ian's estate. But next would come the full-on assault by the entire family and their lawyers, firing off every weapon in their arsenal in a desperate effort to invalidate Ian's will. But the war would be short. The videotape proving Ian MacTavish's loving fatherly intentions, along with reports from top medical doctors and psychiatrists confirming his general good health and sound frame of mind at the time the will was written and recorded, would bring the legal battle to a quick, bloodless end. "Drink that scotch slowly, Charlie." I turned around to find Ian standing in the doorway of my library, alive and well. "That 85-year-old bottle of Dalmore scotch I gave you for Christmas cost more than $30,000. I figure that's about $1,000 a slip. Like drinking liquid gold." I'll savor with every sip. It's the best scotch I've ever had the pleasure to drink. Thank you. You can come in now. Your family is gone. Ian crossed the room with a youthful spring in his step. We shook hands, then hugged for a long minute, a warm, brotherly embrace of two men who truly loved each other. I walked over to the bar and started to pour Ian a generous glass of scotch. "Don't bother wasting that good stuff on me. My taste buds only appreciate the rot gut I was raised on. Save it for yourself, Charlie. You deserve the best for all that you've done for me. Ellie, too." It would be a crime to drink this final scotch by myself. I ignored Ian's directive and filled a glass for him. "There's nobody worthier of this liquid gold, as you call it, than you, my friend." I handed Ian his drink. "Well, then, here's to friends as good as gold," Ian said, raising his glass in a toast. I lifted my glass in agreement and joined Ian in a healthy gulp. "Well, Charlie," Ian chuckled, "I have to tell you that watching my family just now through that hidden camera you set up, seeing the panic in their eyes, listening to their whimpering, well, damn, it was the most fun I've had with them in years. Hell, it looks like money can buy happiness after all. I'm finally rid of my good-for-nothing kin, and all it cost me was generous pensions from my loyal household staff and a few well-greased palms at City Hall and the funeral home. Doc wouldn't take a cent. He's a good man. Always thought so. Wasn't his fault he couldn't save Ellie." "It was a brilliant plan, old friend. One of the best you've ever had, in my opinion." "You're darn right it was, if I do say so myself." Ian bellowed out a hearty laugh. "Even if my family contests the will, what judge or jury would ignore my final 11 wishes to save my kids and grandkids from the evils associated with money, empty all the funds from a charity doing good works, and name my poor dead wife, and give it to a bunch of greedy, slothful kin who squandered every last dime I ever gave them? But I couldn't have pulled it out without you, Charlie. I thank you from the bottom of my heart." He glanced at the whiskey in his hand. "Make that from the bottom of my glass." We toasted each other again and emptied our glasses, chortling and reveling in the success of our clever deception. "Did you finish taking care of business, Charlie?" Ian asked when he'd stopped laughing. "Everything is final. Your home and the 10 acres surrounding it were transferred to Ellie's foundation for use as its headquarters. Your land and other assets were sold, and the proceeds, minus all debts, taxes, and your personal reserve of $10 million, directed to the foundation. Your personal funds were deposited in accounts around the world as you requested, ready to use as you see fit during the remainder of your lifetime. You're as free as a bird, with nothing more to worry about, neither kin nor money." I stood up, walked over to my desk, and pulled out a large manila envelope. "Here are all the documents establishing your new identity as Ethan Egan Lazarus, newly legalized citizen of your ancestral home of Scotland." Ian opened the envelope and examined his new passport. "Like the name?" "It's absolutely perfect," I answered. We'd had a lot of fun tossing around possible new names for Ian after he committed to the plan that fateful day in my office. The first two names had emerged after a slightly inebriated Ian harassed the eel in my office aquarium into hiding. "Lazarus means God help him, and he has. Deliver me from my sinful family to a new life full of peace and happiness. And I aim to be as slippery as my new initials when it comes to eluding my poor kin, though I doubt from now on that we'll ever travel down the same road or in the same circles. course, if by some miracle my family does find love amid poverty or make good on their own, I'd sure like to see that. But though for their own good, I'd have to stay buried, so to speak. Wouldn't want my money-addicted kin to fall off the wagon at the first sight of me and my wallet. I nodded in agreement, though I wouldn't have laid a cent betting that Ian's family would emerge from this crisis united, unscathed, and happy. I hoped they would, if only to ensure Ellie's peace in the afterlife and Ian's good grace with her after he finally joined her there. Tell me, Ian, do you know where you're going, what you're going to do? I asked my newly reborn friend. Taking care of all the legal and financial arrangements regarding the will had taken most of my waking hours during the last 6 weeks, so I hadn't had more than a few minutes to talk with Ian since the plan to fake his death and start a new life went into effect. Little too cold for Scotland this time of year. I'll head there in the spring. I ain't got a clue where I'll be next week, Charlie, or the week afterwards, but Doc says I'm as fit as a fiddle and could last another 20 years or more. Why don't you come along, old friend? Fake your death like me. We'll have the time of our lives pounding around the world, just us two corpses. I'm sure there's some damn good lawyer, a nice fella or a gal you can get to run Ellie's charity and fend off any of my poor whitey kin trying to contest the will. That does sound very tempting, Ian. I'll think about it. Truth was, the offer was too good to pass up. I was as eager as Ian to escape the poisoned personalities of his family, but my own premature death would have to wait until I was sure Ian's legacy was safe. I smiled and raised my glass to my oldest and dearest friend. Anyway, here's to you, Ian MacTavish, the only man I've ever known to die and take his money with him. May God bless you with a long and happy death. The end. Thank you. I hope you enjoyed my story. Good night and sweet dreams.
Thank you, Lisa. Tomorrow at 7 o'clock on the event main stage, I hope you'll tune in for Noir at the Bar, readings from the darker side of crime fiction, where 10 Sisters in Crime authors will read excerpts from their bone-chilling bestsellers. Then at 8 o'clock, join us live on the main stage for Murder by the Book, a Murder on the Menu interactive play, a tale of a book signing gone terribly wrong. Follow the clues, identify the murderer, and maybe you'll win a chance at a prize. Tomorrow on Bedtime Stories, Deborah Goldstein returns to read her story, Wabbit's Carrot. Thank you. Good night.